What if I told you that right now, at this very moment, humans are causing a mass extinction event on par with the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs? Wait, what? That can't be right, can it? Welcome to CEO's Library, the 1% bookshelf, where we dive into the most impactful books shaping industries and driving innovation. Today we're exploring a book that's not just thought-provoking, it's potentially world-changing. We're discussing The Sixth Extinction, An Unnatural History by Elizabeth Kolbert. Now, I know what you're thinking, another doom and gloom environmental book. But trust me, this isn't your typical eco-warrior manifesto. Kolbert, a Pulitzer Prize-winning author and journalist for The New Yorker, takes us on a globe-trotting adventure through time and space, weaving together cutting-edge science, history, and her own first-hand experiences to tell a story that's as fascinating as it is alarming. In the next 30 minutes, we'll explore how human activity is reshaping the planet on a geological scale, examine compelling case studies of species on the brink, and grapple with our role in what might be one of the most significant events in Earth's history. We'll also discuss what this means for business leaders and how we can drive positive change. Let's start by diving into the core concept of Kolbert's book, the idea of the Sixth Extinction. Now, to understand why this is such a big deal, we need to take a quick trip back in time, about 540 million years back to be exact. Picture this. For most of Earth's history, life was pretty simple. Single-celled organisms ruled the world for billions of years. But then, seemingly out of nowhere, there was an explosion of complex life forms. This period, known as the Cambrian explosion, kick-started the era of animals as we know them. Fast forward through hundreds of millions of years of evolution, and we arrive at the concept of mass extinctions. These are periods when the normal background rate of extinction, the typical pace at which species naturally die out, goes into overdrive. Paleontologists have identified 5 major mass extinction events in Earth's history. These are often called the Big Five, and they're pretty epic in scale. We're talking about times when a significant portion of all species on Earth, sometimes more than 75%, went extinct in a relatively short period. Let's break them down quickly. 1. The Ordovician-Silurian extinction, about 440 million years ago, likely caused by severe ice ages. 2. The Late Devonian extinction, roughly 365 million years ago, possibly due to ocean anoxia. That's a fancy way of saying the oceans lost their oxygen. 3. The Permian-Triassic extinction, 250 million years ago, often called the Great Dying, because it wiped out up to 96% of all marine species. This one might have been caused by massive volcanic eruptions. 4. The Triassic-Jurassic extinction, about 210 million years ago, which paved the way for dinosaurs to dominate. 5. And the most famous one, the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction, 66 million years ago, when an asteroid impact wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs. Now, here's where Kolbert drops the bombshell. We're in the midst of a 6th mass extinction event. But unlike the others, which were caused by things like asteroid impacts or massive volcanic eruptions, this one is being caused by us. That's right. Homo sapiens, that clever ape with the big brain and opposable thumbs, is changing the planet so dramatically and so quickly that we're driving species to extinction at an unprecedented rate. How fast are we talking? Well, according to a study cited by Kolbert, the current extinction rate could be up to 100 times higher than the normal background rate. Some scientists estimate it could be as much as 1,000 times higher. To put that in perspective, that's like taking the normal pace of extinction and hitting the fast-forward button hard. But here's the kicker. Unlike previous mass extinctions, which took thousands or even millions of years to unfold, this one is happening at hyperspeed, geologically speaking. We're talking about significant changes occurring over mere decades or centuries. Now, I can almost hear some of you saying, but species have always gone extinct. Isn't this just part of the natural cycle? And you'd be right, to a point. Extinction is a natural process. But what we're seeing now is anything but natural. Kolbert argues that humans have changed the world in profound ways. We've altered the composition of the atmosphere, acidified the oceans, and transformed the landscape. We've transported species around the globe, creating new ecosystems and disrupting old ones. In short, we've become a force of nature in our own right. And here's a sobering thought. Many of the species going extinct today haven't even been discovered yet. We're losing biodiversity faster than we can catalogue it. So why should we care? Why does it matter if some obscure frog in Panama or a weird bird in Hawaii goes extinct? Well, as it turns out, biodiversity isn't just about saving cute pandas or majestic whales. It's about maintaining the complex web of life that supports all species, including us. Each extinction is like removing a rivet from an airplane while it's in flight. Remove enough rivets, and eventually the whole thing falls apart. But don't just take my word for it. Let's look at some specific examples that Kolbert explores in her book. One of the most compelling stories in the Sixth Extinction is that of the Panamanian golden frog. This isn't just any frog, it's a national symbol in Panama, featured on lottery tickets and proudly displayed in zoo exhibits. Imagine a frog about the size of a child's fist, colored a brilliant golden yellow with dark brown splotches. It's not just beautiful, it's also unique. The golden frog communicates by semaphore, waving its limbs to attract mates and ward off rivals. It's like a tiny amphibian using sign language. But here's the tragic part. The golden frog is now extinct in the wild. The last known wild individual was spotted in 2007. What happened? In a word, chytrid. That's a fungal disease that's been wreaking havoc on amphibian populations worldwide. The fungus, Batrachochytrium dendrobatidis, or BD for short, infects the skin of amphibians, which they use to breathe and regulate their water balance. Infected frogs essentially die of thirst in the middle of streams. Kolbert takes us to El Valle, Panama, where she visits the El Valle Amphibian Conservation Center, or EVAC. This facility, which Kolbert describes as half zoo, half ark, is trying to save the golden frog and other amphibian species from extinction. The scientists at EVAC are engaged in a desperate race against time. They're collecting frogs from the wild, breeding them in captivity, and hoping that one day they can be reintroduced to their natural habitats. But it's not easy. The chytrid fungus is still out there, and no one knows how to eradicate it from the environment. What makes this story particularly poignant is how quickly it all happened. In the span of a few years, entire species of frogs went from being common to being on the brink of extinction. It's a stark illustration of how fast things can change in the Anthropocene. But here's the twist. The chytrid fungus didn't appear out of nowhere. It spread around the world through human activity, probably through the international trade in amphibians for pets, laboratory animals, and even food. We unwittingly transported a deadly pathogen across continents with devastating consequences. Now, let's shift gears and talk about a species that's already gone, the great auk. This flightless bird, sometimes called the original penguin, once inhabited the North Atlantic in vast numbers. It was about the size of a large duck, with a black back and white belly, and a large, hooked beak. The great auk's story is a classic tale of human over-exploitation. These birds were easy targets for sailors and fishermen who hunted them for their meat, eggs, and feathers. They were so numerous that ships would sometimes use them as a navigational aid. If you saw great auks, you knew you were approaching land. But their abundance was their downfall. As Kolbert describes, the hunting of great auks reached industrial scales. On one small island off Newfoundland, crews would drive auks up a gangplank onto their ships, where they would be clubbed to death. The birds were so fatty that they were sometimes burned for fuel. The last confirmed pair of great auks was killed in 1844 on a small island off Iceland. A merchant had offered a large reward for their skins and eggs. When the birds were spotted, 3 men rowed out to the island. 2 of the men strangled the adult auks, while the third crushed the egg with his boot. It's a stark reminder of how quickly a species can go from abundance to extinction when faced with relentless human pressure. The great auk's demise happened before the concept of extinction was widely understood or accepted. People simply couldn't imagine that their actions could wipe out an entire species. But the story of the great auk isn't just about overhunting, it's also about how we understand extinction itself. Kolbert uses this example to explore how the very idea of extinction as a phenomenon was slow to take hold. For much of human history, people believed that nature was fixed and unchanging. The idea that species could disappear forever didn't fit into this worldview. It took decades of scientific debate and mounting evidence before extinction was accepted as a reality. This shift in understanding was crucial. It opened the door to conservation efforts and the realization that human actions could have permanent, irreversible impacts on the natural world. In a way, the great auk's extinction helped lay the groundwork for modern environmental awareness. Now, let's dive even deeper into the past and talk about a group of creatures that vanished long before humans arrived on the scene. The ammonites. Ammonites were marine animals related to modern-day squid and octopuses, but they had beautiful spiral shells that could range from the size of a fingernail to that of a truck tire. They lived in the oceans for over 300 million years, surviving several mass extinctions. But they met their end during the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event, the same one that took out the dinosaurs. Kolbert uses the ammonites to illustrate a crucial point about extinction. It's not always the fault of the species that goes extinct. Ammonites were incredibly successful for hundreds of millions of years. They survived ice ages and warming periods, sea level rises and falls. But when an asteroid slammed into the Earth 66 million years ago, they couldn't adapt quickly enough to the rapid changes that followed. This is a key insight. Sometimes it's not about how well adapted a species is, but about how quickly it can adapt to change. And in today's world, where human activities are altering the environment at an unprecedented rate, many species simply can't keep up. The ammonites also serve as a reminder of the long-term consequences of extinction. When they disappeared, it changed the entire marine ecosystem. Other species that had coexisted with ammonites for millions of years had to adapt or die out themselves. It's a powerful illustration of how interconnected ecosystems are and how the loss of one species can have far-reaching effects. So, we've talked about frogs, birds, and ancient sea creatures. But what ties all these stories together? What's the bigger picture here? This is where Kolbert introduces us to the concept of the Anthropocene, the idea that human impact on the Earth is so significant that we've entered a new geological epoch. Now, geological epochs usually last for millions of years. The fact that scientists are seriously discussing the idea that human activity has ushered in a new one is pretty mind-blowing. It suggests that our impact on the planet is on par with forces like continental drift or major climate shifts. So, what exactly have we done to earn this dubious distinction? Well, quite a lot, actually. Let's break it down. First, there's climate change. By burning fossil fuels and releasing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, we've altered the Earth's climate system. We're seeing rising temperatures, changing precipitation patterns, and more extreme weather events. Many species are struggling to adapt to these rapid changes. Then there's habitat destruction. As our population has grown and spread across the globe, we've transformed vast areas of natural habitat into farmland, cities, and infrastructure. This has left many species with nowhere to go. We've also moved species around the globe, intentionally and unintentionally. Remember the chytrid fungus that's decimating amphibian populations? That's just one example of how introduced species can wreak havoc on ecosystems that aren't prepared for them. And let's not forget ocean acidification. As the oceans absorb more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, they're becoming more acidic. This is particularly tough on creatures with calcium carbonate shells or skeletons like corals and many marine mollusks. Now, I want you to take a moment and really think about this. We, as a species, have become a geological force. Our actions are reshaping the planet on a fundamental level. It's both awe-inspiring and terrifying when you really consider the implications. But here's the thing. With great power comes great responsibility. As business leaders, innovators, and decision-makers, we're in a unique position to influence the trajectory of the Anthropocene. The choices we make in our companies, our industries, and our personal lives can have far-reaching consequences. So, I want to challenge you. How can you use your influence to drive positive change? Can you implement more sustainable practices in your business? Can you invest in technologies that reduce our environmental impact? Can you use your platform to raise awareness about these issues? Remember, every action counts. Just as the cumulative effect of human activity has led us to this point, the cumulative effect of conscious, intentional actions can lead us in a better direction. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. This all sounds pretty bleak. Is there any hope? Well, Kolbert doesn't shy away from the gravity of the situation, but she does highlight some of the extraordinary efforts being made to conserve endangered species and ecosystems. Take the California condor, for example. By the 1980s, this majestic bird was on the brink of extinction, with only 22 individuals left in the wild. But thanks to an intensive captive breeding program and ongoing conservation efforts, there are now over 400 condors, with more than half of them flying free. Or consider the story of Lonesome George, the last Pinta Island tortoise, whom Kolbert meets in the Galapagos. While George's species couldn't be saved, his story sparked increased conservation efforts for other Galapagos tortoise species. These stories show that when we put our minds to it, we can make a difference. But they also underscore the enormous amount of effort and resources required to save even a single species from extinction. Kolbert's perspective on whether we can avert this extinction crisis is nuanced. She argues that while we may not be able to stop the sixth extinction entirely, our actions now can significantly influence its scope and impact. As business leaders, we're uniquely positioned to drive large-scale change. Here are a few ways we can make a difference. 1. Embrace sustainable business practices. This isn't just about being green, it's about rethinking our business models to minimize environmental impact while maximizing value. 2. Invest in innovation. Support and develop technologies that can help us reduce our ecological footprint. This could be anything from more efficient renewable energy systems to sustainable agriculture techniques. 3. Consider biodiversity in decision-making. When making business decisions, consider not just the economic impacts, but also the potential effects on biodiversity and ecosystems. 4. Use your influence. Advocate for policies that protect biodiversity and address climate change. Your voice as a business leader carries weight. 5. Educate and inspire. Share what you learn about these issues with your teams, your industry, and your community. Knowledge is the first step towards change. As we wrap up our discussion of the sixth extinction, I want to leave you with a thought from the book itself. Kolbert writes, "Right now, in the amazing moment that to us counts as the present, we are deciding, without quite meaning to, which evolutionary pathways will remain open and which will forever be closed. No other creature has ever managed this, and it will, unfortunately, be our most enduring legacy." This is a profound responsibility, but also an incredible opportunity. We have the power to shape the future of life on Earth. The question is, how will we use it? The sixth extinction isn't just about loss. It's about recognizing our impact and choosing our path forward. It's about understanding that we're not separate from nature, but a part of it. And it's about realizing that our fate is inextricably linked with the fate of all other species on this planet. So, as you go about your day, making decisions big and small, I urge you to keep this bigger picture in mind. Whether you're developing a new product, expanding your business, or simply choosing what to have for lunch, remember that each choice ripples out into the world in ways we're only beginning to understand. Before we go, I want to thank you for joining me on this journey through The Sixth Extinction. It's not an easy book to read. It challenges us and forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths. But it's also a book that opens our eyes to the incredible complexity and fragility of life on Earth and our unique role in shaping its future. If you want to dive deeper into these ideas, I highly recommend picking up a copy of Kolbert's book. You'll find a link to purchase it in our episode description. And if you've already read it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. How has it changed your perspective? What actions has it inspired you to take? Remember, knowledge is just the first step. It's what we do with that knowledge that really counts. So let's take what we've learned today and use it to make a difference in our businesses, in our communities, and in our world. This is CEO's Library, the 1% bookshelf. Until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep striving to make a positive impact. The future of our planet may just depend on it.